to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, a quiet little place where nights are gentle and stories move slowly, like snow drifting down from a soft gray sky. Tonight you will travel to a winter forest where kind silver wolves walk beneath the stars and whisper good night to all who are ready to sleep. For now, there is nothing you need to do and nowhere you need to go. You have arrived. Let your body know that it is safe to soften. If you like, you can gently close your eyes or let them rest half open, growing heavier with every breath. Feel the air moving in and out of your chest. Notice the simple rise and the gentle fall. As you breathe in, invite a feeling of cool, clear winter air brushing through the branches of a quiet forest. As you breathe out, let go of the day, as though you are setting down a heavy coat and stepping inside a warm, safe cabin. In your mind's eye, you begin to see the outline of a landscape. A snowy path appears, pale and soft, beneath a wide winter sky. Listen in the distance for the softest sound of paws on snow and the even softer whisper of a wolf's breath meeting the cold night air. Tonight's story will follow those winter wolves as they move silently through the forest, carrying gentle good nights to those who are ready to rest. Breathe in slow and steady, as though you are filling your lungs with crisp starlight. Breathe out even more slowly, letting your shoulders melt down and away from your ears. The muscles along your neck grow warm and loose. Your jaw unhooks and hangs softly, as though someone has opened a window in a quiet room and let fresh air flow in. With each breath, feel yourself step deeper into the stillness of this winter night. Any thoughts from the day can drift to the edges of your awareness, like snowflakes sliding off a windowsill. You do not need them now. You are here, wrapped in the hush of a story that will hold you gently until sleep comes. And now, as your breathing settles into an easy rhythm, the story begins. There was once a forest that only truly woke when winter came. All through the warmer seasons, it waited patiently, its streams singing, its leaves trembling in the wind. But when the first snowflake touched the highest branches, the forest gave a soft sigh, and its deepest magic opened like a secret door. In this forest, wolves walked like moving moonlight. Their fur held shades of silver, ash, and soft shadow, their paws dark against the snow. They were not fierce nor wild in the way stories often say. These were the winter wolves, keepers of quiet, guardians of rest, and whisperers of good night. Among them was a young wolf called Liora. Her eyes were the color of winter dawn, a pale, gentle blue that held the reflection of every snowflake and star she had ever seen. Leora's siblings loved to race along the frozen river and leap through snowdrifts that sprayed like tiny comets. But Liora liked to walk at the edges of the forest where the trees thinned and the human world began, listening to the slow, sleepy breathing of homes where lamps glowed behind frosted glass. The wolves lived in a hollow where pines leaned together and their branches formed a dark green roof over the snow. At the center of the hollow stood a single ancient spruce. Its trunk was broad and furrowed, and its roots hummed softly with the memories of many winters. Here, each evening, as the sky faded from blue to violet, the pack gathered in a loose circle around the tree. When the first star appeared, the elder wolf, Orion, would lift his muzzle. His fur was nearly white, touched with silver like frost along his ears and back. His eyes held the calm of countless long nights. Orion's voice was not loud. It hardly ever rose in a full howl. Instead, he spoke in a low, steady murmur that flowed like water under ice. "The night has opened," he would say. "It is time to carry our good nights." The wolves would listen, their breaths puffing out in small clouds, their eyes shining in the starlight. Then they would choose their paths, moving out into the forest in pairs or alone, each one guided by an inner sense of where their whispers were needed most. Liora always felt a tug in her chest toward the village at the forest's edge. It was a small cluster of houses with sloping roofs, their chimneys exhaling ribbons of pale smoke. From the forest at night, the village hum was no longer loud or busy. It was a softer, slower rhythm, the clink of a mug set down on a table, the creak of an old chair, the quiet laugh of someone telling a story before bed. On this night, the snow lay deep and undisturbed, a fresh, fluffy blanket that held the shape of every paw and hoof and boot that had passed that way. The sky above was clear and dark, scattered with stars that shimmered like frost on glass. As the wolves set out from the hollow, their paws made a hush, hush sound, pressing gentle prints into the snow that seemed to glow faintly in their wake. Liora walked alone this time, her ears tilting to every small forest sound. She heard the tiny rustle of a mouse tunneling under the snow, the sigh of an owl shifting its weight on a high branch, the faint catching of a distant creek that had not fully frozen. Each sound was quiet, careful, respectful of the great stillness that winter brought. As she approached the edge of the trees, Liora slowed. She always did. She loved this moment when the forest thinned and she could see the first low house roofs rising ahead, their snow-covered shapes soft against the sky. A lantern glowed by a gate, its light trembling golden and small against the deep blue of the evening. There was one house Liora always visited first. It stood a little apart from the others with a steep roof and a single tall pine growing beside its doorway. From its chimney rose a steady stream of smoke, and behind its windows the lamplight was warm and steady. Liora knew this house belonged to a family who often stayed awake longer than most, their worries stretching their evenings into the night. Inside on this winter evening, a child named Mira lay in bed under a quilt patterned with faded stars. Mira's eyes were open, gazing at the ceiling where the shadows of tree branches shifted gently, stirred by the smallest movements of wind. Her thoughts drifted from one small concern to another, as thoughts often do at night. A test at school, a friend's distant mood, the strange sound the house had made last week, as though it were sighing. Beside her bed, a candle burned low in a glass jar, its flames small but steady. From the next room came the muffled sounds of her parents' voices, soft and comforting. Mira listened, feeling both safe and restless, wanting to sleep and yet not quite able to let the day go. Outside, Liora stepped quietly into the shadow of the tall pine. She tipped her head and listened, not with her ears, but with the deeper sense that all winter wolves carried. She felt Mira's wakefulness like a little ripple against the quiet surface of the night. The wolves did not speak with words, not as humans do. Their whispers moved along the edges of sound and silence, carried by the breath of the wind, by the tiniest motion of snowflakes in the air. Liora drew in a slow breath, and as she exhaled, she let the goodnight whisper rise from her chest. It flowed from her like a soft, shimmering cloud, invisible but gentle, weaving through the branches of the pine, slipping between the wooden boards of the house, and gliding into Mira's room. It brushed against the candle flame and made it bend and dance, not in fear, but in a slow, sleepy sway. Mira felt it like the touch of cool silk along her brow. Her thoughts loosened, their tight circles growing wider and softer. She imagined, without quite knowing why, a pair of calm blue eyes watching over her from the shadows outside, not as a threat, but as a quiet reassurance, like a guardian star pressed close to the earth. Liora's whisper carried simple things. It carried the memory of snow resting on branches without breaking them, of rivers slowing their rush and accepting the stillness of ice, of animals curling into burrows and nests, trusting that the world would turn, that spring would come in its own time. It carried the understanding that everything in the forest rested, and that this night was Mira's time to rest too. Inside, Mira's breathing slowed. She turned onto her side, pulling the quilt up higher, tucking it under her chin. The worries that had seemed so large began to shrink, like footprints filling with fresh snow. She did not know with her waking mind that a winter wolf stood nearby. She only felt that the night had grown kinder and more patient. Liora stayed beneath the pine until Mira's breathing settled into a deep, even rhythm. Only then did she turn away, her paws whispering across the snow as she made her way toward the rest of the village. At another house, she found a window where an old woman sat in a rocking chair, a shawl around her shoulders. The woman's eyes were open, gazing into the fire that glowed low in the hearth. She was thinking of years already past, faces she had loved and lost, moments that shone like lanterns in the long hallway of her memory. Her heart felt full and a little heavy, both at once. Leora's whisper to her was different, but shaped with the same care. This one carried the slow contentment of trees who have seen many winters, the quiet pride of mountains that have watched dawn after dawn without growing impatient. It carried the sense that every moment lived, whether bright or sorrowful, had joined a great, gentle river that would carry her onward in safety and dignity. The old woman's shoulders sank a little deeper into the back of her chair. Her eyes fluttered closed and opened again, slower now. She felt, though she could not see, that the night outside her window was thick with kind presence. She drew the shawl closer and let herself drift, the rhythm of the rocking chair matching the steady beat of her heart. In house after house, the winter wolves walked unseen. They padded along garden paths, across small wooden porches dusted with snow, beneath windows where frost painted feathery patterns that looked like ferns and feathers and wings. Each wolf carried a slightly different kind of good night, shaped by their own memories and the hearts they visited. Talon, a dark-furred wolf with bright amber eyes, was drawn to homes where parents stood in doorways and watched over sleeping children, the love in their gaze tinged with worry about the days ahead. His whispers were woven with courage, with the strength of roots buried deep beneath the frozen soil, unseen but holding everything steady. Mira's younger brother, curled in his own bed, received a wild, playful dream from another young wolf who still loved to chase starlight and leap into drifts. His sleep, filled with friendly snow foxes and shimmering birds, and he woke in the morning feeling brave and bright, though he would not quite know why. Over time, the village came to know these nights. Without fully understanding them, parents would say that the winter air was good for sleep, that the quiet of snow made dreams sweeter. Children whispered to each other about shapes they sometimes thought they saw. At the edge of the trees, glimmers of silver moving just beyond the reach of lantern light. Some of the elders simply smiled and said that the forest was kind, and that kindness could be felt if one listened closely enough. Back in the hollow among the leaning pines, the ancient spruce watched the wolves come and go. Its roots rested deep in the earth, touching stones that had lain there since before the first house was built, since before the first path was cleared through the trees. The spruce loved winter most of all, for it was the season when the forest's heartbeat was easiest to hear. Each night, after the wolves had carried their good nights, they would return one by one to the hollow. Snow might cling to their fur in tiny stars, their whiskers dusted with frost. They would greet one another with soft brushes of muzzle to muzzle, exchanging quiet stories of the houses and hearts they had visited. Liora enjoyed these returns almost as much as the wanderings themselves. She would settle near the base of the spruce, feeling the soft weight of tiredness spread through her body in a pleasant way. Orion would lie nearby, his great head resting on his forepaws, his eyes half closed but still bright, with a calm, watchful light. "Did you find them?" he would ask in his low, rumbling whisper. "Yes," Liora would answer, her thoughts folding into his. "The restless child and the woman with eyes like old stars. They are sleeping now." Orion's tail would stir once against the snow. "Good," he would murmur. "The night is easier when the hearts of the village are resting." As the weeks of deep winter passed, the nights grew longer, stretching like soft blankets across the land. The wolves did not mind. They loved the quiet hours before dawn, when the world felt held as though some great, unseen hand had cupped the forest and village together in a single, gentle palm. One night, as a soft wind traveled through the trees, something new appeared in the sky above the forest. Pale ribbons of green and silver light began to move across the darkness as though someone were painting slow strokes of color with an invisible brush. The wolves lifted their heads, eyes wide and glowing, watching the dance of the lights. The northern lights had come to visit, swirling and flowing in silence. Their glow fell over the snow, giving it an otherworldly sheen. The wolves' fur shimmered faintly as they moved, as though they too were woven from the same light. The village had never seen the sky quite like this. People stepped quietly out of their houses, wrapping themselves in coats and scarves, their breath puffing in small clouds. They stood and stared upward, their faces lit with wonder, their usual thoughts falling silent before the sky's soft performance. Liora and the other wolves felt a deep, resonant joy as they watched. The lights seemed to hum with the same energy that lived in the ancient spruce, in the stones, in the sleeping roots of every tree. It was a reminder that the forest, the village, the sky, and all the hearts between were part of one continuous, shimmering story. On that night, the wolves' whispers grew even softer, more luminous. They carried not just rest, but also a sense of belonging, as if each person and creature, awake or asleep, were a small spark in a vast and kindly dark. Mira stood in her doorway, her eyes wide as she watched the sky. Her family stood beside her, their shoulders touching. She felt Liora nearby even before she saw the faint outline of silver fur at the edge of the trees. The wolf's presence was still and steady, like a familiar lullaby played very quietly. Though they did not speak aloud, something passed between them. Mira felt gratitude swell in her chest, though she did not know exactly why. Liora felt it too, warm and bright, and carried that feeling with her as she moved on, letting it mingle with her own quiet happiness. Soon after, people began to return indoors, drawn back to their warm rooms and thick blankets. The lights continued their slow dance for a little while longer, then gradually faded, like a song sung softly to its last note. The forest settled again. Snow fell in tiny, delicate flakes, barely visible against the darkness. The wolves resumed their nightly paths more gently than ever, as though mindful of the lingering magic hanging in the air. As winter deepened, a calm routine took hold. Each evening the village lights dimmed earlier. The wolves' paws traced familiar routes, their noses following the crisp patterns of scent in the air. Nights passed in a soothing rhythm, one folding into the next like pages in a well-loved book. In Mira's home, bedtime grew easier. The small candle by her bed still burned, but she often fell asleep before it had melted even halfway down. Her dreams were full of forests and stars, of soft paws and low, comforting murmurs. Sometimes she dreamed of walking beside Liora through the snow, leaving parallel tracks behind them. The old woman in the rocking chair slept more soundly too. Her memories still visited her, but now they came in gentler waves, accompanied by a feeling that she was not alone, that the world had not forgotten her. She sometimes woke with tears on her cheeks, not from sadness, but from a bittersweet sweetness that left her heart feeling lighter. Elsewhere in the village, people found themselves sleeping more deeply, waking a little more rested, a little more peaceful. They did not know to thank the wolves or the forest, but in small ways, they did. They stepped more kindly around the edges of the woods, leaving offerings of bread or grain on old stumps, or simply pausing to listen to the quiet and whisper a soft greeting into the trees. The winter wolves noticed. They heard each kind word as clearly as a bell, felt each gentle act like a warm patch of sunlight on their fur. Their goodnight whispers grew even more tender, shaped not only by the needs they sensed, but also by the gratitude they felt. The nights moved on, the air remained cold and clean, and the stars kept their unblinking watch. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the darkest part of winter began to soften at the edges. Dawn arrived a breath earlier, and dusk a breath later. Snow still lay deep, but somewhere under the surface, tiny seeds and roots stirred, holding the faint promise of seasons yet to come. The wolves understood this cycle well. They knew that their most important work belonged to these longest nights, when the weight of darkness could feel heavy to human hearts. They also knew that rest itself was a kind of quiet magic, one that gave strength to face the bright, busy days when they returned. So they continued their rounds, their pacing slow and sure, their whispers as delicate as frost and as steady as the turning earth. Liora grew more confident, her steps unhurried, her presence as comforting as the steady hush of falling snow. Orion watched her with quiet pride, seeing in her eyes the same gentle light that had guided him through many winters. One night, a storm drifted in from the distant mountains. The sky turned a soft, hazy gray, and snow began to fall in thick, swirling curtains. The village roofs grew heavy with white, and the forest floor disappeared under a fresh, deep layer. The wind rose, but it was not harsh. It moved like a slow song, bending the treetops in graceful arcs. Inside their homes, people listened to the sound of the storm, the muffled rush against the windows, the sigh of snow piling gently against doors. Many felt an extra twinge of restlessness, that old instinctive unease that comes when the world outside is being reshaped and hidden from view. The wolves slipped out into the storm without fear. This was their favorite kind of night. The world soft and blanketed, footprints filling almost as soon as they were made. Their fur quickly gathered little crowns of snow, and their whiskers glittered with melting crystals. Liora found her way once again to Mira's house. The windows were fogged with warmth from within, the candle by the bed burning more brightly than usual. Mira lay awake, listening to the storm. The sound made her think of lost paths and hidden things, and a tiny flicker of worry stirred in her chest. Liora drew close to the pine tree and shook herself gently, sending a small shower of snowflakes tumbling down. She lifted her muzzle and breathed out her softest, slowest whisper yet. It moved through the storm like a kind current, parting the swirling snow around it, slipping soundlessly through the window glass and into Mira's room. This whisper carried the feeling of being deeply sheltered. It carried the memory of dens carved into snowbanks, warm with shared breath and fur pressed close. It carried the sensation of lying in a hollow beneath a great fallen log while the storm raged above, knowing that each gust only packed the snow tighter, making the shelter warmer and more secure. Mira felt it as a warm weight settling over her, like an extra blanket woven from invisible threads. The storm's voice changed in her ears from unknown and uneasy to steady and soothing, like a lullaby hummed behind closed doors. Her muscles loosened, her hands unclenched, and her breathing deepened. Her eyes drifted shut, then opened once more, heavy with sleep, before finally closing for the night. Outside, Liora stayed where she was, watching the soft glow of the candle through the curtain. It flickered once, twice, then burned steady. She could sense Mira's dreams turning playful, full of snow tunnels and friendly, glowing eyes in the darkness. When she was sure the child slept soundly, Liora moved on, letting the storm swallow her tracks almost at once. By the time the storm had passed, the village and forest lay under a new, thicker quilt of snow, clean and untouched. Dawn arrived pale and shy, spreading a delicate pink light along the edges of the clouds. The wolves, tired from their long rounds, returned to the hollow beneath the pines. One by one, they curled up around the roots of the ancient spruce. Their bodies formed a gentle circle, breaths rising and falling in an easy, shared rhythm. The spruce hummed softly to them, a sound too deep and slow for human ears. It sang of rest and roots, of stillness and the ebbing of night. Liora found her place near Orion, tucking her nose beneath her tail. Her eyelids felt heavy, and a pleasant warmth spread through her, from her paws to the tip of her ears. Her last waking thought before sleep took her was of the village, now resting under its bright cloak of snow, its people waking with hearts just a little calmer, a little more at ease. As the wolves slept, the forest held its breath. The only sounds were the faint creak of branches and the distant crackle of ice shifting on the river. Sunlight filtered down through the pines in thin, bright ribbons, touching fur and bark and snow with gentle gold. In the village, the day went on. Paths were cleared, fires stoked, bread baked. Children laughed and played, leaving chaotic patterns of footprints in the snow. Grown hands worked and carried and mended. Life moved forward as it always did. Yet under it all, there remained a soft awareness of the night's quiet gifts. People found themselves pausing for a heartbeat longer before speaking, listening to the hush that lived between sounds. Some felt a mysterious comfort when they looked toward the forest's edge, as though unseen eyes watched over them with care, not from above, but from among the trees. The winter wolves would rise again before the next dusk, ready to walk their silver paths and whisper their gentle blessings. They would do this night after night, as long as snow lay on branches and frost painted its delicate patterns on the windows of the village. And for those who lay down to sleep beneath those roofs, on quilts and pillows, warmed by the day's presence, the wolves would always be near. Even if no one ever saw them clearly, even if they were only felt in the way worries grew lighter and breaths grew deeper after dark. Now, as this story begins to settle, imagine that you are resting beneath the same winter sky. Picture the forest standing tall and still, each tree wrapped in snow. See the silver shapes of wolves moving slowly between the trunks, their paws silent, their eyes gentle. Feel their whispers brushing against your thoughts, smoothing away the sharp edges, softening anything that feels too bright, too tangled, too heavy to bring into the quiet of night. Let their calm spread through you, like warm light seeping into the corners of a room. Your body knows how to rest, just as the forest knows how to sleep beneath the snow. Your breath is steady and sure, like a wolf's paws leaving prints in soft drifts, unhurried and safe. With every exhale, you sink a little deeper into your own den of blankets and softness, sheltered and secure. Outside your inner window, the winter wolves keep their gentle watch, carrying good nights on their slow, silver breaths. Inside, your thoughts grow drowsy. Your mind grows quiet. The story folds itself like a quilt and tucks itself around you. There is nothing you need to do now. No paths to follow, no worries to hold. Only this peaceful drifting, this gentle falling, like snow wailing onto a silent field. Sleep comes softly, like a wolf's whisper at the edge of the trees. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.